Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are breaking down my golf tournament. That's right, I'm calling it my golf tournament. We are going to be talking about the 2025 Wyndham Championship, which is taking place about 20 minutes from my front door here in North Carolina. And so I have been to this tournament multiple times. I know a lot about Sedgefield. I've never gotten to play it. I would love to, never gotten to, but I do know a ton about this course. I've been there. I know how the deal goes at this course, and I'm really hoping that I can give you guys a lot of kind of local knowledge here today to kind of help break down this golf course and break down this golf tournament and help you guys pick out some winners, whether you are playing DFS betting or one and done here this week. Now, before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of the PGA Tour season. We're going to have these weekly breakdowns for every PGA Tour tournament. And then also we've got a ton of college football and NFL best ball content coming your way, as well as college football DFS content when that gets closer. And our college football season preview is going to be dropping fairly soon as well. All right, that does it for the intro, though. Let's go ahead and dive into Sedgefield Country Club. All right, Sedgefield Country Club has been the host of the Wyndham Championship since 2007. Prior to that, it was known as the Greater Greensboro Open. That was the tournament that was played here, and it was most often played at Forest Oaks Country Club, which personally, I love Forest Oaks. It's a public course. I played it many a times, but it didn't necessarily stand up to modern technology. It's not all that long or not all that challenging for the pros, whereas Sedgefield can give a much better test. Now, one of the reasons why I like the PGA Tour coming to Sedgefield is that it gives the pros a taste of what I get to experience every Saturday morning with North Carolina golf. And what I mean by that is there is a ton of elevation change at this course. Like it is, TV does not do justice how hilly and how undulating and just kind of the terrain of this course. It does not do it justice. If you're there in person, or if you ever played golf in North Carolina, you know that it's pretty hilly. You're going to have a lot of side hill, uphill, downhill lies, and that is definitely a skill that it's hard to quantify, but if a pro has it, they're certainly going to succeed here this week. It is also a very tight tree-lined golf course. But here's the crazy part. By the standards of the courses here in my area, Sedgefield is not that narrow at all. Like there's courses that are much more narrow here in the area than Sedgefield. And I can name them if you wanted me to. But Sedgefield, for PGA Tour standards, is quite tight. It is about 30 yards wide off of the tee, or in terms of the fairway width. But also the driving corridors are not super wide because pretty much every fairway is tree lined, and every big miss is going to be in a kind of wooded tree area or into like a native grass type of area. And you do not want to miss big. If you miss big here at this golf course, you are dead. Now, I also think that Sedgefield has a ton of character on the greens as well. To me, these are some of the cooler greens that you will see on the PGA Tour. This is a Donald Ross design. If you're familiar with Donald Ross, he's one of the best golf architects of all time, and he is excellent at designing green complexes. Oak Hill, Pinehurst number 2, Detroit Golf Club, all designs by Donald Ross, all feature very interesting green complexes, and Sedgefield is another one on that list. Now, if you're listening to everything I'm saying, you're thinking, holy crap, Mike, that sounds really difficult. Why is the winning score here always around -20? Well, the bottom line is Sedgefield is a course that is not very long by PGA Tour standards. It is a par 70, even though it's a par 72 for members, and it plays at about 7,100 yards on tournament week. Now, what that means is it's one of the shorter courses in the PGA Tour rotation, and just that lack of overall distance kind of negates the ability of making this golf course difficult. Because basically, there's a huge penalty for missing the fairway off the tee. We went over that. But there's no real discouragement from pulling out a 3-wood and hitting it 280 because most of the par 4s are between 400 and 450 yards. And so if you have a 400-yard par 4 and you hit it 280 with your 3-wood, then there's not that much of an advantage to be gained by hitting it 320 with your driver and having an 80-yard approach shot in as opposed to a 120-yard approach shot in. So what you see a ton here at Sedgefield is you see a ton of laying up and strategy off the tee because, like I said, the pathway, or let me think the right way to phrase this, the corridors off the tee, especially visually, look quite narrow, especially if you're there at the course. It looks quite narrow with the way that some of the trees hang and the angles on some of the holes. And so you see a lot of guys clubbing down off the tee. And what that does is that creates an environment where if you're able to put the ball in the fairway, it becomes an approach and putting contest. And like I said, a lot of those approach shots are going to come from about 100 to 150 yards. And the putting is going to come on very difficult Bermuda grass greens. Now, another variable that I mentioned about the pros having to play North Carolina golf is the weather itself. Sedgefield is not a course that sees extreme winds like an Open Championship or a Scottish Open would, but afternoon thunderstorms in North Carolina are quite common. And so what you tend to see a lot of at this tournament is a lot of Saturday morning cuts, a lot of double rounds on Saturdays and Sundays where they're still trying to finish around 3 or round 2. And you end up seeing a course that just cannot get super firm and fast over the weekend because oftentimes there are afternoon thunderstorms each day during the week. And that is certainly going to be the case here again this week. It's really cool because, to see what the weather is going to look like at Sedgefield, I can just literally look at my homepage on the weather app. It's kind of a nice little home court advantage this week. And so what you're going to see is it's been a dry last week or so in North Carolina, but we're going to get thunderstorms each of the next 3 days. And that is going to create a wet golf course, and it should create a little bit easier scoring conditions. And so the name of the game this week at Sedgefield for all the golfers playing in it is hit fairways, hit greens, make putts. And if the play's a little bit softer, it's going to be a little bit easier to do so on all 3 counts. Now, I will say I've been in this tournament 3 times. I'm heading there this week. I'm hoping to head there on Thursday. My wife and I are going to be going, and we've had a little bit of debate amongst ourselves on whether or not we should bring our 2-year-old daughter with us because she loves watching golf on TV with us. In fact, she is already a Rory McIlroy fan. Every time Rory is on the TV, she yells, "Go Rory." She celebrated his Masters victory when he won. Like, she would have a blast. But the problem is Sedgefield's like such an intimate environment. I very much worry about her making noise at the course, and also we're going to be doing a lot of walking, so I worry about her walking. But we'll see. Might not bring the daughter, but definitely me and my wife are going to be in attendance at Sedgefield on Thursday. If you are staying, or if you're coming to the tournament, if you're watching this and you need any dining recommendations, any golf course recommendations, any general travel recommendations for the Greensboro area, I got you. I know this place very well. Like I said, Sedgefield's about 20 minutes from my front door here. It's about 7 minutes from where I grew up, from where my parents used to live. And also, if you are going to the tournament, there are a few spots that I highly recommend kind of camping out on. First, there is a public kind of grandstand at the 9th green, and the 9th green is a really cool green complex. It's really hard to make putts on. So it's just kind of a great place to just chill out and watch the guys come through. But also, Sedgefield has kind of 2 little amen corners. You can kind of see action on 6, 7, and 8 if you position yourself in the right spot. And then on the back 9, the par 5 15th, par 3 16th, par 4 17th also kind of has a little amen corner going on, where you can see all 3 of those holes. And really, I think the star of this golf course is the par 3s. I think the par 3s are some of the best par 3s on all the PGA Tour. All the greens for the par 3s are very interesting. They're tiered. They involve a lot of strategy based on the pin location and the yardage that the hole is playing at. So in case you guys can't tell, I love Sedgefield, and I'm really excited that the PGA Tour is going to be going to Sedgefield. So in terms of a handicapping perspective, what are we looking at this week for Sedgefield? Well, like we talk about every week, for the key stats for Sedgefield, strokes gained on approach is going to be number 1. If you, with all else being equal, how you are able to hit your iron shots from 100 to 175 yards this week is going to be the tiebreaker. Everything else that we're looking at is going to be a driving accuracy kind of base. I want to look at distance from the edge of fairway, which measures how big you miss when you do miss the fairway. It also kind of just is a gauge of total control of your driver, because if you miss big at Sedgefield, you are dead. Keeping the ball in the fairway off the tee, no matter how you do it, is going to be paramount to success this week. And then with it being one of the shorter courses on the PGA Tour, I want to focus on performance on short courses, and I also want to focus on putting on Bermuda grass. Like I said, these are interesting green complexes. They're Bermuda, which is what you see in a lot of the Southeast, and it definitely is a different putting surface. Like, personally, there's courses around here that are Bermuda and bent. It's a big difference in the 2 surfaces. I putt much better on bent grass than I do on Bermuda. Why? I don't know, but there's definitely guys on the PGA Tour that have that as well, and it's definitely going to be something that I'm going to look at this week, which also reminds me, we also have Bermuda grass rough this week, which is different from what most PGA Tour players are used to dealing with. Bermuda grass rough is very unpredictable, even if it's not that tall. You just don't know by looking at a lie whether you're going to be able to get all the ball coming out of the rough, or you can end up with some balls that are flyers where you actually hit it more than you're used to because it's kind of teed up a little bit in the rough. Now, in terms of the comp courses this week, there's a lot of them, because Sedgefield kind of is an archetype that you see a few of on the PGA Tour, and there's also certain aspects of other courses that fit it as well. The number 1 comp to Sedgefield, and one that you've seen a ton of players have crossover success at, is TPC Sawgrass. TBC Deer Run is another one, and then the Copperhead course in Florida is another one as well. Both those courses are accuracy over distance off the tee, and then approach and putting from there. Harbor Town is another short positional golf course. East Lake is a Donald Ross design that is also in the southeast, also a par 70. And then, we just got our kind of cookie cutter short positional golf courses: Waialae, TBC River Highlands, TBC Summerlin, Colonial Country Club, and Sea Island. Like I said, that's a big long list, but you generally see kind of a similar group of guys have success across all those golf courses. All right, that does it for the key stats. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to dive down the rabbit hole. All right, if you've been with us all season long, you know that when I talk about the rabbit hole, I'm not referring to a literal rabbit hole in the ground. I'm talking about the rabbit hole, which is a tool from BetSperts Golf that allows you to use all different kinds of filters and conditions in order to really isolate the micro skills and statistics that you want to see in golfers for a specific golf course. And then it allows you to build out a custom model and see where they rank. This has allowed me to find all different kinds of golfers at all different courses this year. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a golf data site. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our key stats, throw it into a custom model, and tell you who the best in the field are for each of those stats. Now, first thing, distance from edge of fairway in the calendar year 2025. That's a stat we talked about on the key stats page. Best in the field: Takumi Kanaya, David Ford, who is a local guy. I believe he played his college golf at Wake Forest, which is about 20 minutes from Sedgefield. Aaron Rai, third. Alex Noren, fourth. Ben Coles, fifth. Then I wanted to look at strokes gained off the tee on less than driver courses. So on courses where guys are generally not pulling driver out of the bag, who is the best off the tee? Rico Hoey, Thomas Rosenmuller, Aaron Rai, Jesper Svensson, and Isaiah Salinda. Then I just wanted to look at strokes gained on approach for the calendar year 2025. Best in the field: Henrik Norlander, Lucas Glover, Antoine Rosner, Doug Gim, and Akshay Bhatia. Then the next thing I wanted to look at was strokes gained approach on easy approach courses. And the reason why I use this specific filter was it allowed me to take a look at courses where guys have wedges and irons in their hand more often than like long irons and hybrids, because the shorter approach shots tend to be easier approach courses. And so that is what I wanted to look at here. So the best in the field in that stat are Henrik Norlander, Siwoo Kim, Doug Gim, Ben Griffin, and Emiliano Grillo. Then I want to look at strokes gained putting on Bermuda greens. Now, I'm also not factoring in like around the green play or scrambling this week. This is a very difficult scrambling course, but the bottom line is if you hit good approach shots and you hit good putts, scrambling's not going to matter a whole lot. So for strokes gained putting, I want to look at just Bermuda greens over the last 3 years, who are the best in the field: Ben Griffin, Harry Hall, Andrew Putnam, Jacob Bridgman, and Max Grazerman. Then I wanted to look at 3-putt avoidance for the calendar year 2025. So basically, these are guys who are not going to have a birdie putt turn into a bogey: Braden Thornberry, Emiliano Grillo, Harry Hall, Ricky Fowler, and Vince Whaley. Then I want to look at strokes gained putting on difficult putting courses. These are courses that have difficult greens, who can, kind of roll the rock good at those courses: Max Grazerman, Harry Hall, Victor Perez, Denny McCarthy, and Matt Kuchar. Then I want to look at strokes gained total just on short courses. I think this is kind of the best way to do it. Not necessarily look at driving or approach on short courses, but just, hey, who generally plays well at short golf courses? Best in the field: Victor Perez, Tom Kim, Patrick Fishburne, Keith Mitchell, and Ben Griffin. Then when you look at just Sedgefield only, who are the best in the field? Well, there's a lot of field that has never played this event, which, quick side note, this is one of the best fields in the history of the Wyndham Championship. And the reason why is because what you're looking at this year is a ton of guys who are trying to play their way into the FedEx Cup playoffs or onto a Ryder Cup team. And this is one of the last opportunities to do both those things. So you end up getting a pretty good field here at the Wyndham this week. And I'm really excited to go see it in person and see some of these guys. Best in the field at Sedgefield: Ben On, Webb Simpson, Sung J M, Kevin Kisner, and Eric Cole. Then I want to look at strokes gained total just on just on all of my comp courses. On all the comp courses that we talked about on the last slide: best in the field: Denny McCarthy, JT Poston, Tom Kim, Sung J M, and Lucas Glover. Then, because it's a par 70, what I want to look at was par 4 scoring, which is paramount on par 70s. Best in the field: Kevin Roy, Harry Hall, Kurt Kitayama, Matt Kuchar, and Paul Peterson. And then strokes gained total on just par 70s. I think that's another way to kind of gauge it. Best guys in the field in par 70s, Aaron Rai, Robert McIntyre, Keegan Bradley, Hideki Matsuyama, and Tom Kim. Now, when you throw all that into the custom model, my number one golfer for this week is Ben Griffin. So here's the deal with Ben Griffin. Let's go ahead and talk about Ben Griffin now. So Ben Griffin is a North Carolina native, grew up in North Carolina, played his high school golf in North Carolina, played his college golf at the University of North Carolina, loves coming to Sedgefield. In fact, if you drive around Greensboro, he's the guy that's on all the billboards for the Wyndham because he's the guy that was a known commodity that was going to come play in this tournament. You can't commit to put guys on billboards if you don't think they're going to play. And so he's the guy that's going to play in the tournament, right? He's an elite Bermuda putter. He is an elite PGA Tour approach player, and he generally just has an all-around game. Now, I think it will be a lazy take right now to say that Ben Griffin has missed his last two cuts at the John Deere and the Open, and to say that his Linsanity run is over and he's back to being an average PGA Tour golfer. I think that is lazy because he missed both of those cuts very close to, if not on the number, had just a few holes where just a different bounce here or there kind of changes the outcome. And the approach play is still there. The around the green play is still there. And I'm not concerned about the putting because those are not the types of grass that you're going to see here at this event. And then, oh, by the way, Ben Griffin has good history here at the Wyndham, a 4th, a 17th, and a missed cut. And that was before he kind of leveled up as this next level player here this year. I think that Ben Griffin is a great course fit. I'm not surprised to see him as my number one golfer here for this week. He's a guy that I'm certainly going to be eyeing in DFS and potentially betting outright. I have not made my decision on that yet. Number 2 in the model, which makes sense that he's number 2. He's the defending champ, Aaron Rai. When you think about distance of edge of fairway, that's like the ultimate Aaron Rai stat. He is in supreme control of his golf ball. He does not miss fairways big. And for that reason, he tends to show up well at these types of courses. He tends to show up well in this type of environment. And he is my number 2 golfer from the model. Not surprised there. Luke Clinton is 3rd. I'm a little bit surprised by this, but I actually think the more time goes on, the better of a spot this is for Luke Clinton. I think as time goes by, he is going to be more of a short course guy than a long course guy, and I think his results bear that out. T34 at the Travelers, which is one of my comp courses, and he hasn't finished better than that since. T18 at the PGA National earlier this year, which is one of my comp courses. T2 last year at the RSM Classic. 5th here at this event last year. I think that this is kind of a better type of environment for Luke Clinton. And oh, by the way, he played his college golf in the state of Florida very recently. And so you know that he's used to Bermuda greens. You know that he's used to being out there in heat and humidity. So I think this is a really good spot for Luke Clinton, 3rd in my model, not surprised. Victor Perez shows up very well in my models all the time. He is number 4 in the model this week. He is just an approach king. He's just a really good approach player on the PGA Tour. He is also a guy that is very good at short courses. He's a very good Bermuda putter. Checks off a lot of the boxes for what we're looking for here this week. And he is going to be a guy that I'm going to be targeting as a value play in DFS, but I question whether or not he has the upside to win the golf tournament. Austin Eckroat is number 5. This is another guy that is just an above average PGA Tour approach player. And he's coming in with really good approach form, tends to play his best at short golf courses. I'm in on Eckroat again as a value DFS play. I do question if he has the upside to win the event. Number 6 is a former champion of this event, Siwoo Kim. This is kind of like Siwoo's jam, like this type of golf course is where Siwoo tends to show up well at. I'm ignoring the miscut last week. I think this is the type of event that Siwoo could play well at. Denny McCarthy is another guy that tends to play well at these shorter positional golf courses. He's number 7 in my model. Number 8 is Hideki Matsuyama. Number 9, Keith Mitchell. And number 10, Eric Cole. Now, I kind of tinker with this model all week long. So if you would like to know the final top 10 on the model, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. What I do every single week is I post an article with a full write-up and my core plays on DFS for DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as the final top 10 for the model. So if you want access to that, head on over to the Patreon and go ahead and subscribe. You'll also get access to my best ball ranks for NFL and college football. And then once college football starts, you'll have access to the DFS core plays for that as well. Also, if you want more information from me, you can always follow me on Twitter. That's a good way to get in contact with me. And then also you can join the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. The Fantasy Corner Discord is a community of a bunch of people who are really smart, really good people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. And if you're just looking for people to talk DFS with, it is very DFS oriented. But if you're looking for a crew to talk DFS with, I cannot recommend it enough. All right, let's take a quick breather and then let's talk about the board and our strategy for DFS betting and one and done. So, taking a look at the board as a whole this week, I do think that for me, there's a very clear strategy presenting itself for DFS this week, right? So, you think about last week and how the soft general pricing led you to pretty much be picking at the top from Burns, Goddard, McNeely, and then there were just a lot of very popular players in the 9 and 8K range because not a whole lot of people doubled up in the 10K, not a whole lot of people went all the way down to the 6K, and you just ended up with kind of like more balanced builds because of the soft pricing, right? Well, I think that might be what ends up happening this week because the pricing on DraftKings is quite soft again. However, I am probably going to be going entirely contrary to that. And the reason is quite direct. I really do like a lot of the top of the board this week. We already mentioned my affinity for Ben Griffin. I like Matt Fitzpatrick. I like Keegan Bradley. I like Robert McIntyre. So all three of these guys have a really good track record at short positional golf courses. All three of them have good track record at short par 70s. And then, oh, by the way, all of them are coming off of good finishes at the Open. Why does that matter? Well, the Open was a golf course with Royal Portrush this year that was very much a fairways and greens golf course. If you were accurate off the tee and you were hitting the green regulation, you were generally doing pretty well at Royal Portrush. That's why Scotty won, because let's be honest, Scotty would be a great fit at Sedgefield if he ever showed up here. But that's beside the point. So I really do think, in addition to Griffin, I really do like Fitzpatrick, Bradley, and McIntyre. So what I'm probably going to be doing is playing a lot of both of them, or two of that group in the same lineup, and then bypassing a lot of the 9s, a lot of the 8s, and a lot of the upper 7s, which are going to tend to where you see a lot of ownership fall. But I think that range has a lot of guys who are not in great form, not great course fits, and I'm just not interested in playing high ownership in DFS. For instance, Hideki Matsuyama, 9,800, has been awful off the tee this year, can't hit a fairway to save his life, and then he has missed the cut at this event his last 3 times showing up. Like, I think that's an easy fade. I also think Jordan Spieth and Harry Hall and Jake Knapp are easy fades in the 9K range as well because of the fact that they are not very accurate drivers off the tee. Now, I also do think that Aaron Rai, we mentioned him in the model section, I think he's going to be very chalky, very popular this week. So if you do play Aaron Rai, I think a lot of people are going to be playing Aaron Rai as their second man into a lineup by playing one of the guys at the top and then playing Aaron Rai. So I think that one way you can get different is by playing him as the first man in or the third man in, or just getting different with your plays at the bottom. Now, I also am going back to Akshay Bhatia. So you guys know, if you've been watching our golf coverage for the last few years, I'm a big fan of Akshay. I just think he's got the goods. I think he's got a skill set that is very transferable to winning golf tournaments. He's an elite iron player. He can spike with the putter, and he's generally a good driver of the golf ball. Well, he just kind of has this problem where one round of tournament, he doesn't really show up. And it happened at the 3M. It happened at the Charles Schwab. It happened at the Memorial. He's just kind of been a little unlucky in that regard. And I kind of think that if he were to put it together all 4 rounds, Sedgefield will be a great spot for him because it is accuracy over distance. It is a course where he can separate with his approach and with his putting, of which he is generally pretty good at both of those skills. Lucas Glover also makes a lot of sense at $8,900. In fact, we've got 2 former champions in the 8K range, Lucas Glover and Siwoo Kim. Glover is coming in with much better form. Glover would absolutely be a guy that I would be considering because of the form that he is coming in with. And then $8,100, I think Denny McCarthy is going to be quite popular this week. This is a great Denny course where he can really separate with his putter. And if he just keeps it in play off the tee, he's going to be in very good shape. Now, like I said, I'm not really interested in a whole lot of the upper 7K range on DraftKings. But once you get down to 7,500 and below, I really do think there's a lot of interesting guys here. There's guys that I'm considering betting outright. There's guys that I'm considering for DFS lineups. There's just all sorts of considerations in here. But first off, let's start with this. I think there's some very direct course fits in the lower half of the 7K range, guys that you would expect to play well on shorter positional golf courses that I think are going to get some ownership in DFS and make a lot of sense to bet for like a top 20 or a top 10 this week. Guys like Bud Cauley, guys like Chris Kirk, guys like Christian Bezadenhout, guys like Nico Echeverria, Andrew Putnam, Austin Eckert, we already mentioned. I think all those guys make a lot of sense here this week, and I think they're all going to be relatively popular in DFS. Actually, Putnam might not be, because Putnam is a guy that hurt a lot of people last week when he was chalk at the 3M Open and missed the cut. But all those guys, I think, make a ton of sense here this week. Now, other than those, Emiliano Grillo, I would include in that as well. I forgot about him. Other than those guys, I kind of like the idea of going back to Tom Kim this week. So he won this event in 2022, has not been back since. And you look at what he's doing, and the approach play has been generally really good for the most part this season. It's been the driver that has let him down, but he's starting to slowly improve it. And then it's been the putter that's let him down. But he actually tried out, I believe it was a new putter, if not a new putter, a new grip last week at the 3M Open, putted it well there. I'm willing to go back to Tom Kim. I just think that, kind of like Akshay, he's talented. He's one of my guys. I'm going to continue to keep playing him. Ryan Fox is a guy that I find really weird to be priced at $7,300. He's won twice this season. He's playing great golf. He's an elite approach player. I know we typically think of him as like a bomber type of player, but he was T17 at the Travelers. He won the Myrtle Beach Classic, which is on Bermuda. Like T20 at the Players, there's enough here to make me think that he can show up here at this event, even though he did miss the cut here last year and play well just because he is playing such good golf right now. And then another guy that I love this week is Andrew Novak at 7,300. He might be a guy that I bet. He played his college golf at Wofford, which is in Spartanburg, and he is from North Carolina. So I'm assuming he's been around Sedgefield. If he hasn't been around Sedgefield, he's been around this type of course. And he just continually just runs together, made cuts, but his best finishes are at the shorter positional golf courses. And most of those he's losing strokes putting at. I think once we get him on actual Bermuda grass, I think that he's going to putt better, and I think that is going to do well for him. And I think he's a great fit for this event here, is Andrew Novak. Now, heading down lower. Oh, Alex Smalley is actually a member at Sedgefield. Kind of coming off or in and out of form, but member at Sedgefield, take that for what it's worth. I think he's a little interesting. William Mao is also a guy that I think is interesting. He is playing really good golf. Recently, he won at the ISCO Championship, the alternate event, and then he also played very well at the 3M Open, finishing T7. You look at his strokes gain chart right now, it's a whole lot of green with the exception of the putter, but the last two events he's putted really well. Is there something to that? Maybe, but I just like the fact that the guy is hitting the ball really well right now, being a really good tee to green player. He's a guy that's definitely going to make my DFS player pool. Ryo Hisatsune is $7,000 even on DraftKings, kind of falling out of form a little bit, but he was T3 here last year. I do think that he's a guy that, as we kind of get a larger sample size of him in his PGA Tour career, I do think he's a guy that we like on these shorter positional golf courses. I think that's going to be more his jam. And I think he's a guy that you don't necessarily want in Birdie Fest. I think that you want him at kind of like an average difficulty to more difficult course. And some people, I think, will be a misnomer, but I do think some people are calling this a Birdie Fest. I don't expect it to be a pure Birdie Fest. Yes, birdies are going to be had, but it's not going to be a massive like -20 winning score like we saw last week. I think -20 would probably be like the peak, unless this course does end up playing super, super soft. Now, in the 6K range on DraftKings, these would be your value plays. These are your long shot bets. I think there's a ton of interesting guys here. The cool thing about Sedgefield is that Sedgefield is a course that because of what it is on the scorecard, it brings everybody into play. Nobody is going to be boxed out of winning at Sedgefield because they're not long enough, or because they can't hit their long irons well enough, right? Or because they can't chip well enough or can't putt well enough. Like, it's a week where if you hit fairways and greens, you're going to have a chance to win. And I really do think that this is a week to take a shot at some long shot bets. I do think that this is a week to take a shot at some of these guys in DraftKings, because like I said, I think you can double up on the guys at the top and backfill with multiple guys here near the bottom and be totally okay with that. So starting at $6,900 on DraftKings, there's some guys I like. The model loved Victor Perez. The model loved Eric Cole. I love Adam Svensson this week. He's a guy that is historically a terrible putter, but he putted well at the 3M Open. I believe he is trying out some kind of new putter as well, like Tom Kim. And the approach play is still there. The approach play has been great. More often than not in 2025, he has a win at the RSM Classic. He has great history here at this event. He's finished 7th in each of the last 2 editions. So I really do think Adam Svensson really, really worth a look this week there at $6,900. If you're just looking for like approach play kings, you've got Lee Hodges and David Lipsky here in this range, as well as Doug Yim. David Lipsky, in particular, playing some really good golf over the last few weeks. Doug Gim, was hoping to see a little bit better course history, but he has played this event 5 times, missed the cut played 6 times, missed the cut 3 of them. But the ball striking continued to be good for Gim at the 3M Open, even though he did miss the cut. If he just putts the neutral, I think Doug Gim would absolutely have a chance at winning a golf tournament. A guy who's not likely to putt to neutral is Matt McCarty. He did miss the cut last week, I believe, at 3M. Yeah, or no, I'm sorry, was like the very last golfer of everybody who made the cut. But he's generally a good approach player. He's generally a good putter. He can spike with the putter. He's a guy that I do think has a little bit of like a winning upside. He won last year in the fall at $6,800 on DraftKings. I absolutely like the idea of that. Now, there are a few more like bargain bin value plays I do want to talk about. Carson Young at 6,600 on DraftKings. I played him last week at the 3M. Did not disappoint. I think he's an accuracy over distance guy. He's a good ball striker. Absolutely good with going back to him at $6,600. And then going further down the board, Thomas Rosenmuller is kind of in the Doug Gim category of cannot chip or putt, but really good ball striker. Would absolutely be okay going with him. Mac Meisner is coming off of a 14th place at the 3M Open. Prior to that, he was awful, but he was 12th here last year. I think he's better at shorter positional golf courses, much better on approach than off the tee. Don't mind that. David Ford at 6,400. It's probably the lowest I'm willing to go. I think I had it wrong earlier. If I said he went to Wake Forest, yeah, he played at North Carolina, so I was off by the wrong ACC school there. But this is a guy that you're not going to gain much from looking at his profile, but he is an accurate driver of the golf ball who is coming up onto the PGA Tour, hadn't gotten experience of making the cut at the 3M Open. It's not all bad with him. Like, I think that you get a local guy on a course that he's familiar with that actually suits his game and wanted to give him a shot. And then if you're familiar with the website Daggolf, which you should be, they love Paul Peterson this week at $6,200. Find him to be a really good value. He's a guy that is short but accurate off the tee. Played really well at the ISCO Championship a while back. I think you could do worse than him at $6,200 because, like I said, everybody is in play here this week. All right, let's take a quick breather, and then we're going to talk about one and done to close us out. All right, so in one and dones this week, you likely only have 3 weeks left in your one and done season because this is the last week of the FedEx Cup regular season. And then we've got the 2 playoff weeks, which are, if we're being honest, much more significant from this one because they are much larger prize pools and they are no cut events. So next week will be the week where you're really going to want to play your big dogs. And so what I think that leads us to this week is like, we're looking at a board where like, honestly, is there anybody here that I really want to save for next week? Like, is there anybody here that I think could have a chance at winning next week? Maybe Matt Fitzpatrick, maybe Ben Griffin, but I don't know. I really feel like this week is just a week to use whoever the best player you have left is, but also to play your position and to play your league availability a little bit. And here's what I mean by that. I am currently in the middle of the pack in this one and done that I've been picking here on the show. 93% of the league has Matt Fitzpatrick, and that is 6 of the 7 people ahead of me have Matt Fitzpatrick. So it's highly likely that a lot of those people are going to pick Matt Fitzpatrick because they have him available and he is the favorite to win the golf tournament. So if I need to gain points, if I need to gain money, I'm not going to pick Matt Fitzpatrick in this situation. However, looking further down the board, like 39% of the league has Keegan, and it's actually very few people ahead of me. So if I had Keegan available, I think Keegan would be a very logical pick here. Let's look at the same circumstance for Ben Griffin. Ben Griffin is available for 3 of the 7 people ahead of me. However, I might want to use Ben Griffin next week, honestly, because I've kind of been super, super aggressive in this one, and I really don't know who I have available for next week. I'll have to like double back and check and do some research. Now, I really do think Robert McIntyre will be a solid pick in that circumstance. I don't have Hideki. I don't have Spieth. I don't have Wyndham. I don't have Akshay. Now, I really do like Lucas Glover. You know what? No, maybe. I'm considering Lucas Glover right now, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and put him in, but I reserve the right to change that. I'm going to go ahead and pick Lucas Glover. I just think the defending champ coming in great form. Not a lot of people are going to scroll down that far to pick him, and I need to gain a little ground. I think that'll work out. But all right, y'all, that is the episode. That is everything you need to know about the Wyndham Championship in about 30 minutes. Like I said, this is my tournament. I'm really looking forward to it, in case you guys can't tell. And I'm hoping that I was able to give you guys all the information you need in order to pick some winners in DFS betting and one and done here this week. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button. It'll help me out a ton if you guys do that. It really does help, and I really do appreciate it. If you're listening on audio, you can rate and review. And then if you have not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We just hit our 1,000 milestones, and now we're looking up at 1,500. And the only way we can get there is if people like you subscribe, and you'll be notified when all of the rest of our videos drop for the rest of the PGA Tour season, as well as our best ball and preseason content for college football and NFL, and then the regular season as well. But that's going to do it here for this episode, y'all. Like I said, if you're coming to the Wyndham this week, let me know. I'm going to be there on Thursday. If you're traveling from out of town, need any recommendations on where to go eat, where to play golf, anything, let me know, because I'm a native of this area, for better or worse. And I've got more than enough places that I can recommend to you that hopefully I can find you some that you could enjoy. But anyway, that's going to do it here for this episode. We're going to be back next week for the FedEx St. Jude. Thank you guys for watching and to this point. Best of luck to you at the Wyndham Championship with your DFS lineups, bets, and one and done entries. Hopefully we do well. Hopefully we're able to give you guys some winners. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I will see you next time.